every week.
Yeah, I know. But technically we have one now.
Yeah.
What is going on?
Okay, so for those of you who are walking in, I'm just quickly going to go over an intro. So if you want to just listen while you slowly set up your computer, that's totally fine. So welcome to week 4 of CAD training. Today we are going over constraints. So just to go over the quick Q&A again, if you can't make it to the session, obviously you guys are here, but if you can't make a future one, we are recording these sessions and we're putting them up on our Slack. So if you can't make it to a future one and you want to keep staying updated in this loop, you can go on our Slack after the meeting and you can watch the video and kind of follow along at pace at your own house. So now we're kind of starting to get into the meat of Fusion. We've kind of taught you the basics. So today is kind of going to start the more difficult aspect of Fusion. We're going over constraints, and with that, you should basically have all the tools in your toolbox to start using the more complicated features. So to answer the second question, we're kind of slowly getting out of that basic, hand-holding, and we should start letting you off a little bit more. And we are going to start putting practice parts at the end of all of our slides. So we're going to be talking less and giving you more time to kind of treat this as a workshop and work on the parts with all of us leads here. You can raise your hand, we'll come over and help you out. And then obviously, if you guys have been coming for a while, you can bring your laptop. If not, we have the computers here for your use. Again, this is what we've covered so far. This is what we're covering today, sketch constraints. And then before, we're quickly going to talk about exporting files. So exactly what are sketch constraints? Sketch constraints work pretty hand in hand with dimensions. So instead of saying, I want this line to be, let's say, 2 inches, you could give it a constraint and say, I want this line to be parallel to that line or equal to that line. You're basically giving shapes form without giving them numbers, but instead you're giving them equalities for them to be equal or have relationships to other things. So with that being said, before we do anything, we're quickly going to go over this kind of subtopic. We're going to be downloading a file today. So what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to freeze this so you guys can look at this. If you can go into your browser and type in the name of this website, it's 100 Days of Fusion. This is a resource that I personally used in high school when I took CAD classes. I think it's amazing. And when we were remaking this lesson plan, they had a perfect thing for what we're doing today. So if you can go to this website, you can put it in your browser, and you want to scroll to day 27, and there should be a button right underneath it that says download activity link. If you guys have trouble with this at any time, raise your hand. We have, I believe, 3 leads here today, and we can come over and help you. This is probably going to, 4, okay. This probably might be the most difficult part of it because I don't know how your operating systems are going to work, but you're going to download it to your downloads drive. I'm going to unfreeze it back to show you how we get it into Fusion. Okay, so again, assuming that you've gone to the website and you have found this link right here and you press download, it should automatically be in your downloads file in Fusion. So how you can import it into Fusion is if you're in this base screen, you can click on the file button and then it'll drop down and you'll have another button called the upload button. And you can click on that and that'll send you to a little pop-up splash screen.
Yeah, let us know if you're having any trouble downloading the files. Say the file. Oscar, do you mind going back to where you sent the file?
Again, so we're downloading this resource from the internet. Fusion has lots of great resources on the internet that you can download from online archives. This is one of them. So we're going to be downloading a file to your computer, and then we're going to be importing it into Fusion. So to get the file, again, this is a website. You can type it into your browser. You want to scroll down. It's organized by days that have little lesson plans. So we're going to day 27, and you're going to download the file. And it's kind of this cool interactive worksheet that this guy made. And so instead of having you guys draw it, we're going to be focusing on actually just the constraints. So you're going to be working with the pre-existing features that are there. Again, if you've done that, you can go into Fusion. There's a file button in the top left corner. And then once you get there, you can push upload. I'm going to assume that most of y'all have done this. If you haven't, again, raise your hand. But once you get there, you're going to get to this screen. You can push select files. By default, it should be put into your downloads so you can find it. And then it'll ask you where you want to save it. Now, make note of that because just like your computer directory, you're gonna have to go find that place to open it back up. So your default here is gonna be admin project. You could change it if you happen to have made a folder so far with your personal work. You can save it in there, but just note this location right here because this is where you're gonna have to go and retrieve the file when we're about to open it on the next slide. And we're gonna start working through it. Check this side. I think Patrick's over there. They're good. They're good. Alright, can I get a thumbs up if you guys have gotten this far? You have the file and you have it open on your computer. Alright.
Look up download or wait for it. If you go download, you can just like in Google, you can use it. Or yes.
This guy just walked in and got up to where I've gotten so far. You guys good? Okay. Oh, okay. Should I just go? Okay.
Okay, so I know we have one person here who's downloaded it. Raise your hand if you're on his stuff right now.
I think it's the rest of the room.
So you just hit upload it or you upload that, right? And you upload the download thing?
Yeah, and then just make sure where you save it because it's like a computer directory. It's gonna save it to it's gonna save it to a folder, and you have to go find it.
Is that what you're talking
Are you guys almost good? Okay. I'll give it like one more minute, but then I want to start back up again for everybody else.
Oh, here we go. You needed to be in the, you uploaded, so when we hit upload, we send it to a location. Yeah. And so if you're not in that location already, I think you were in the previous project, and so then you can see it. So we just have to do so. I'm just going to do. So yeah, keep in mind when you upload for a specific project, and then that project.
2 more seconds. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody's gotten to this part. So we are not going to be making a new sketch. Instead, we're going to be editing an old one. So we haven't gone over this yet, but if you want to edit an old sketch, how you do that is you're going to go over here to this left side of the screen. This is your tree. So this is a lot of the settings for the actual CAD file. So under this one right here, second to bottom, is called sketches. And all the way on the left, you have this drop down arrow. So we're going to click on the drop down arrow, and you're going to see we have one sketch, and it happens to be the sketch that has all these shapes on it. So once you have this option, you're going to right click on it, and you're going to push edit sketch. And once you have that open, again at the top, you should see all of the sketch functions that we've been working with the past 3 weeks. So if you got to this point, we can now start tinkering with the actual parts, versus if you weren't, you wouldn't be able to make any progress because you wouldn't be in the sketch, you wouldn't be able to modify anything. So if you got to this point, raise your hand. Anybody who hasn't gotten to this point? Okay, so we are going to start working across the worksheet, kind of like a book. So we're going to go from left to right, and then we're going to drop down one. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to be working with the perpendicular constraint. So up here, all these shapes in blue are what allow you to make lines and other shapes. Everything over here in red, underneath this constraint tab, is what's going to allow you to kind of tag these relationship operators to the actual stuff that you've made so far. So assuming that you all have passed high school geometry, none of this is going to be new information. It is very self-explanatory. All we're doing is kind of showing you the location of the stuff and that a lot of these features do exist. So the first one we're going to be working with is the perpendicular constraint. It is this one right here. It's the one that has a perpendicular T, so you can highlight over it. Again, it tells you what it does. It's going to make them at a 90-degree angle. We're going to click on it. And as you can see, it's highlighted in this blue button, so that's how you know it's enabled. If you push escape, it turns white. That's how you know you're not selected it. So you click on it, it turns blue. We're not using it. So if you want to make the two perpendicular, all you have to do is you can click on both of them. And as you can see, it made it a perfect 90-degree angle. So while we're still on the shape, we're going to do another one. If you notice, this shape does move up and down. There is no constraint. We want to try to generally put it in the middle. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this one up here. This is called the midpoint constraint. So this is going to allow us to put a point in the middle of a line. So we're going to click on it, and we're going to hover over this part right here, and we're going to wait for a point. Now if you notice, if you take your mouse off, there's only 3 points, because this point that intersects the two isn't default shown, so you have to go over there and you have to find it. So you want to find this point, you want to click on it, and then you want to click on the line, and it's going to snap it directly in the middle. And now if you see, if I try to move it, it all moves together. So we've made this thing perfectly perpendicular. They have a 90-degree angle. It's stuck perfectly in the middle. The reason it's still blue is because there's something constraining it. You can still move it up and down and left and right, but with respect to each other, they're perfectly parallel and at a midpoint.
Okay, so I see how you make it perpendicular, but mine still slides around on the other line.
Did you do the midpoint one as well? You want me to go back to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so see if I can delete the constraint. Okay, so here, I'm at the point you are. So this part is freely moving. So we're going to use another constraint. It's not written up here, but we're going to use another constraint. It's this one right here. It's this little red triangle. It's called the midpoint constraint. And basically what it's going to do is, this one's a little specific. The first thing you click has to be a point, and the second thing you click has to be a line. If you click a line on a line, nothing's going to happen, and you're just going to be stuck where you were. So you're going to click on this. Again, you have to hover over this point right here to find it, because the Fuse is going to hide it. So you want to click on this point, and then you want to click on the line. And that's going to make it perfectly midpoint. And now as you begin to slide it around, you can tell that it's stuck in there. So we're going to move on to the second one. We're going to be working with the parallel constraint, which is the one to the left of the perpendicular one. So if you can go ahead and find it. So this one really only works with 2 entities. So to make all 3 of these parallel, we're going to have to do 2 separate movements. So we're going to click on the first one, then we're going to click on our second one. Oops. Click on our first one and our second one, and now these 2 are parallel. Now if we wanted to make the third one parallel, since these two are parallel, we can click on the third one and either of these. And now all three of them are perfectly parallel. Alright, so I'm going to move the longer one into the middle, and we're going to be working with another constraint. We're going to try to make these two shorter ones symmetric to the middle one. So this one's actually not shown up here. You're going to have to go to this drop-down menu, and all the way at the bottom is this one called symmetry. Now symmetry is different from all the other ones because all of the constraints require 2 inputs, while symmetry requires 3. So how this works is you're going to want to click on the symmetry, and you want to click on the 2 things that you want to be symmetrical, and your last click is what you want them to be symmetrical to. So if I want the 2 shorter lines to be symmetrical to the big one in the middle, I'm going to click on the first short one, the second short one, and then the longer one. And now these are symmetric. So if I press escape and I leave the constraint, I can now move these, and as you can see, they're perfectly symmetrical to this middle. Okay, yeah, I'll go over one more time. So this one is hidden. This is the symmetrical constraint. You have to go to the drop-down menu. It's the second to last one. And this one's different from all the other ones because it requires 3 inputs, not 2. So your first 2 clicks are going to be the 2 things you want to be symmetrical. And your third click is going to be what you want them to be symmetrical to, or your axes in this case. So once you enable the symmetry constraint, in this case, or at least for my example, you can do it differently. I'm trying to make the 2 shorter lines symmetric to the longer one. So I click on the 2 shorter ones first, and then I click on the longer one. And this gave me an error because I already had it there. I forgot to back escape out of it. But okay, so we're gonna go to this third one. First one we're gonna work with is the fixed constraint. So this is going to lock shapes in place. So these are all blue, and if you grab the center, notice you can move them around freely. There's nothing stopping you. So what we're going to do is we're going to fix them to the page, and instead of turning black like we've done before in the past, right? We've covered that if your sketch is fully constrained, it's going to turn black. In this case, it's going to turn green. So we're going to push the lock button up here. Should be the third one to the right, and then we're going to click on circle 1, and it turns this green button. So this tells you that it's not dimensioned to anything. It doesn't really have a space, or it doesn't have a position in space that we've given it dimensions to. Like, we don't know if we're X amount from the X axis and Y amount from the Y axis. It's just frozen in space, and that's why it's green. So that's how you differentiate it from the standard black line, which is hold it in space because of its dimensions. So we're going to freeze or lock number 1, and then we're also going to lock number 2. So when you're done, I'm going to push escape, and 1 and 2 should both be green. You good? Should I keep going? Okay, so the next one we're going to use is the tangent constraint. So that's this one up here, third to the left. So we're going to be making circle 1 and circle 3 tangent, and then we're going to make circle 2 and circle 3 tangent. So I'm going to click on 1 and 3. And then if you notice, I still have it selected. I can't point because you guys can't see it, but on the bottom right. And this works for all the constraints. If the icon's still there, that means you're still in constraint mode. As soon as I press escape, it goes away. So while you're still in constraint mode, you want to make 3 and 2 tangent. And now you can see the circles are touching.
Like Mickey Mouse.
Yeah. And so this works for curves, but also lines. So with what I just said, you guys can go ahead and do the exact same thing with this shape. I'm going to make the circle tangent to this line first, and then this total separate movement, I'm going to make this circle tangent to this line. And now it's all tangent together. everything in constraints works in pairs of 2, except for the symmetry constraint, which works in pairs of 3. So you can't make everything tangent or everything equal or everything horizontal in one set of clicks. It has to be a multiple.
Is there a way to get the circle to move to the line instead of having the line move to the circle?
You can mess with it a little bit, but I think the order in which you click on it. So I'm going to try this. I think if I click on the line first and then the circle, oh, maybe not. Let me back out. I guess that works out. You could lock the position.
Okay.
Fusion will kind of just choose one, but I'm assuming when you're going to be making sketches, you're going to have dimensions on stuff. So some stuff will be locked in place. So it's going to move whatever isn't locked in place. In this case, we have everything's not locked in place. Everything's blue. So it's just going to choose whatever it wants to. So now we're going to scroll down to this second row. So we were working on the, how do you say this? I've always said it weird. Coincident? Coincident? Okay. So coincident. I've always said coincident, but okay, coincident. So this constraint allows you to tie 2 points together. It's this one up here that looks a little bit like an L. And if you read it, it's going to constrain the position of 2 points to a singular point. So we're going to click on it. And our goal here is to have both of these endpoints constrained to the center point of C. So we're going to click on not the outside of C, but the point of C. And then we're going to click on either of these, really. We're going to click on this endpoint of A. I'm going to drag it back to the center, just like that. And then I'm going to go back to coincident, and then just like that.
I can't seem to lock the center of the circle.
Everybody else good? All right, so we're going to move on to this one. We're slowly getting to the end of it. We kind of ran through all the important ones. So next we're going to go to concentric. So this last one on the top. So this is basically going to allow you to have multiple circular, anything with an arc, ellipses, and you're going to allow them to, works very similar with how the last one worked, but this is going to allow you to allow multiple circles, arcs, ellipses to share the same point. So we're going to click on it, and same thing as usual, you're going to click on 2 at a time. So I'm going to choose this one, and then I'm going to choose this one, and they now share the same point. It's kind of hard to tell because they are the same radius, so I'm going to try to shrink one of these down so you can tell a little more. There you go. But as you can see, they now share the same center. If I pick the middle and move it, they move together because, again, they're tied together. And then just to finish it off, same thing, top right, click on it, and then I'm going to make the new pair coincident to this last one. There you go. I'm sure. Alright, so we're moving on to this, what is this, number 7. So we're going to be talking about collinear now. Collinear is another one of the ones that is not shown on this top bar. You have to go to the drop-down menu again to go find it. It's this third to bottom. Collinear is going to put 2 lines basically on the same path. It's going to give them the same direction. So we're going to click on it, and you can ignore this floating point, but we're going to click on, hold on. So Fusion does that. If you ever have difficulty, so you can tell whenever you're going to select something because it'll turn a dark blue. If that doesn't happen to you, you can just push escape and do it again. Sometimes it's just a weird system error, But if that ever happens, like it just happened to me, just push escape and do it again, and you'll have this little option pop up. But once we have this collinear constraint, again, I found it right here. I'm going to go and I'm going to click on these two lines, and they are now collinear, so I can drag them apart, but no matter what, they are now attached and they are a part of the same line. They have the same direction. If I were to modify one, the other one would change as well. I'm gonna go over it.
Oh, you're gonna go over it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no spoiler.
The file, like, they're like under the thing. It's weird. You can see them. I don't, like, I was the constraint symbols, they don't show. But they're like under this, like, under the paper. You show the back of the paper.
They probably hide the body. Work best. I know.
They're all they're all shown already. It's just they're like
Such a strange thing.
Okay, so these next two we're going to be talking about is both the horizontal and vertical constraint. Now these two are tied to the same button. It's this one up here. So if you this one's important to read. So it's going to find the line and it's going to see if it lies either closer to the horizontal axis or the vertical axis. And whichever case that is, that's the one that it's going to apply. So if it's basically a flat horizontal line, it's going to use the horizontal constraint. But if it's, you know, maybe like a 90, maybe like an 88 degree, maybe 91 degree, you know, pretty close to vertical, it's going to use the vertical one. So this one's a little iffy because it has the option to switch between the two, and they're tied into the same button. So these two are relatively horizontal. So if you use the horizontal/vertical constraint, it's going to make them horizontal. Now vice versa is for this one down here. These are relatively vertical. So instead of making these horizontal, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to make them vertical. Okay, so we're going to go over just one last one, and it's this fourth one right here, the equal sign. It's a red bar, white bar, gray bar. So equal sign is honestly probably one of the most commonly used constraints because you can substitute it out for a dimension. So if you make a shape and you want this line to be equal to that line, instead of manually typing in 5 twice, or you could dimension a function, you could just do a constraint. So the equal constraint is going to set two things equal. So the first one that you click on, that's what it's going to be equal to. So if I click on the shorter one and then the longer one, it becomes, this longer one becomes a shorter one. But if I Control Z and I do it the other way around, I click the longer one first and then the shorter one, oops. It is a little iffy. It's important to have dimensions because sometimes, in this case, since everything's blue, I guess it's just choosing the smaller one, but it will work out the other way around. The constraints in Fusion can be like that sometimes. So the more dimension, the more black stuff you have when you're drawing, the more you can kind of control how these constraints work out. So we're going to use the equal constraint, and we're going to make all of this an equilateral triangle. So I'm going to click on the hypotenuse and then the shorter side. And then again, I'm going to click on one of these shorter sides since they're not equal, and then click on the bottom. It should be a perfectly equilateral triangle. And then it'll work the exact same way for any other shape. So real quickly, I'm just going to click on the bigger circle and the smaller circle, and then it'll make it the same size. So we covered just about all of them, except for this last one, which is curvature. If you would like to know more about it, it's in the slide. I personally have never used it before in about 4 years of CAD. I really don't even know what you'd use it for because there are many better ways to do what it does, but it basically will make kind of like an obtuse angle, a curve, but you can do that by just manually sketching it out to be a circle or an arc. So if you want to learn more about it, it's on the slide, but other than that, there are many other ways to get around it. So I know somebody asked earlier about how do you delete constraints. So this worksheet doesn't really do the best job of it, so I'm going to open up another file, and I'm quickly going to go over that. So I'm going to create a new sketch. You don't have to follow along if you want to. If you just want to look at the screen and see what I do, that's totally fine. So I'm just going to make 2 lines, and then I'm going to make... So I'm going to be covering the first one we did, which was perpendicular. So I'm going to make these 2 perpendicular, and then I'm also going to make it coincident. So there you go. So they're perpendicular. So let's say I change my mind, and I want to delete it. So Fusion's a little weird with it, but what you have to do is you have to hover over this point, and you'll see little icons pop up. I can't move my mouse off of it, because if I do, they'll kind of disappear. So these icons, if you notice, will match the ones up here. So if I were to do like a midpoint and I wanted to delete the midpoint, you'd see a little triangle pop up. If I wanted to delete a tangent would pop up. So I'm going to hover over it, and sometimes they don't show them all. So if you zoom in, you can sometimes get them to pop up. But for whatever reason, I can't get this perpendicular one to do. Huh? Is it above it? Where?
Right there.
This one?
Oh,
That's
no.
yeah. Okay. So that one's not popping up, but in this case, if I wanted to delete the coincident, I can click on this one, and there's a simple delete key. If you notice, it turns blue, and then you can move it away. But the reason that, the reason the perpendicular one is not showing up is because if you notice, this constraint is the vertical constraint, and this one is the horizontal one. So the perpendicular constraint kind of got put into 2 separate things, because, I mean, it's the exact same thing. A perfectly vertical line, a perfectly horizontal line is the same thing as 2 perpendicular. So it deletes that constraint and it puts it these 2 separately. So if I were to put the coincident back and then delete one of these, that would allow me to then, just like that. So that one's a little tricky because it'll hide it. But all the other ones, the icon's going to show up exactly as you see it up here. I know in other CAD softwares like SolidWorks, there's a way to get a drop-down menu. I personally do not know how to do that. You have to know where it is, and you have to zoom in to like the intersect point. And when you have really big files, it gets really difficult to do so. So, I mean, honestly, this is one of the areas where Fusion's a little weak in my opinion, but it's just my 2 cents.
If you click and hold on the point, it brings up the drop-down menu of all the stuff that's there.
Oh,
So,
did not know that. Okay.
This training is for everyone.
Interesting. Okay, I did not know that.
It's probably off. Is it a left click or a right?
It's a long left click, and it'll pop up a little menu.
Good to know. The annoying thing is that I guess it highlights which thing it's
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes they'll have like 5 constraints of the same thing at one point. You don't know which one is which. But I guess if you go to that menu.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far on what we learned today? Okay. So I'm gonna put up this practice part. Real quick, if you guys want to try to attempt it, this kind of summarizes what we've done so far. A big skill that you have to learn is how to read blueprints. So this right here is a 3-side view of this part. So this is your front view, this is your top view, and this is your right view. And now whenever you make these manufacturing drawings, the goal is to not have any repeating dimensions. So believe it or not, some things may be kind of hidden, but every dimension that you need to make this part is here. It might require like a little bit of mental math to try to extrapolate some of the dimensions, but if you guys want to try to give a shot at this, again, we have 5 of us here that can come around and help.
And on that note, the next few weeks are pretty much going to be this kind of structure. We're going to be having, we're going to be sending you basically a whole PowerPoint of multiple files that kind of are going to look like this, and you'll just kind of be in here and you'll be trying to construct those parts based on the dimensions and drawings that we give you. So this is good practice for that. And it's just good to have this as a skill under your belt. Because especially if you're going to be going into industry or something, you might have to recreate some parts or some things for your internship or for your job or whatever it is. And so it's really important that you understand how to read these drawings and how to reproduce them.
Yeah, again, you should know everything, but just something that we haven't covered. So this shape right here, this is a center mark. So this plus marks the center of the circle. Right here, this little dashed line marks the center of a hole. So if you notice, this circle and this are the same. This is the side view of that. So these walls are the diameter of this, and this dashed line is the center point of that. And then all these other dashed lines are hidden features, but those are the 3 types of lines, also the solid lines. So those are the 4 types of lines that you really need to be able to learn for reading drawings. So again, you have your solid ones, which is what you can see. These little lighter dashed ones are what you can't see. These are center lines, which mark the center of a hole from a side view, and these are center marks, which mark the center of a hole from like a top view, where you actually can see the diameter and the radius and all that.
Pastor, do you mind going over how to start a new part just for the people who it's first time here?
Yeah. I'm going to freeze it on one of these screens. Okay, so on this screen, if you want to make a brand new part in Fusion, you can open up, whenever you open it up, it should make you a new page, but if not, you can go up here to this little plus sign, and you can open up a new tab. I know, I have a lot open. But to start a sketch, this up here is the view cube, and this allows you to kind of orient yourself. So because we're working in 3 dimensions, you do have a lot of areas to look at. So you can use this to quickly move around. Right now, if you look at the colors, or you can look at this up here. We're currently working in the Z, or in the XY plane. Again, so this is the XY plane. So if you want to start a sketch, you have this button right here. It's called the Create Sketch. It's the leftmost one under this solid tab. Just about everything that we're going to teach you is going to be under the solid tab. Surface, you'll use a little bit, and then everything else is very, very, very specific that you probably will only pull out once or twice. But you can click on this Create Sketch, and then you have to click on a plane. So because we just started, all that we have is the default planes, and especially because I'm looking in the top-down view, I already have this one selected. So if I wanted to quickly move, you can see I have all these other ones. So here's my YZ, here's my XZ, here's my XY. So I'm going to start in the XY, and then this opens up this little sketch menu. So if you notice, this wasn't here before. This only pops up after you're in this sketch mode. And this whole side of the tab is your create feature. So this is what allows you to make 2D shapes. And then whenever you leave the sketch, so you can press finish sketch. This side back here that we were just on is what allows you to make those 2D shapes into 3D. So you can extrude them and whatnot.
How do you constrain this between these 2 and what your point is?
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's
Oscar, is that in millimeters?
It's in inches. It doesn't matter, but I use inches.
the rounded edges have dimensions?
These?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's radius 10. Radius 10 inches. Yeah. So,
Did we teach construction lines?
yes, we taught it 2 weeks ago.
I wasn't here 2 weeks ago, so just want to make sure we taught that.
That was the last time I was here. I couldn't make it last week. Yeah. Construction lines and constraints should make everything here.
Show me what the center line thing does.
The center line?
Yeah.
Like what I was talking about earlier here on the drawing?
No, there's a different one in the sketch palette menu that I don't know. I've never used that.
I personally never use it either. It's,
I'll take her on.
I'm more than happy to try to find, what does the center line do in the sketch feature for Fusion?
Yeah, so
What do you mean?
I noted.
you just like, it's when you sketch something, there's a menu on the right when you're drawing lines that gives you a bunch of different like options.
Right next to construction line is a button called center line.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But like, I noted, I personally never used it.
Yeah, I don't
I don't
think I
know.
ever used
I don't know
it.
why you would need to use it.
I barely even use construction lines.
Oh, you're insane. That's how I was taught.
I don't.
That's how I was taught. My CAD drawings look like pretty bad because I have construction lines everywhere. Again, that's how I was taught to CAD.
Okay, so I would draw a full rectangle out of that arc, corners, and cut off the straight up that 20.
Does anybody want to see quickly like the steps that I took to make it? If that would help you out. Anybody? Okay.
Then what I would do is, I would
Okay. So I'm gonna go over this real quickly. I'm just gonna show you like the thought process that I did when going through this. So down here in this bottom left corner, Fusion has this feature called the skill tree, and it shows you the time, or it's called the timeline, and it shows you the process that you made from beginning to end. So I'm gonna start actually from the beginning, and I'm gonna show you how I did it step by step. So first, I started from nothing, and then I made a simple cube. Once I made that simple cube, I filleted off the corners. Once I had that, I added this little L shape. Once I had that L shape, I made this part over here in the corner. And then lastly, I made the hole. It allows you to play a video, but it goes a little fast, and I'll show a little more detail. So if you want to look, it'll run it real quickly. So I'll play that again in case you want to look.
That's a major motion picture right there.
I wish you could make it slower, but I'll put it back up. And if you need help, I'd be happy to come over.
What were you thinking? How were you thinking of doing it?
I would think it's the square.
Can you walk 2 points?
No, I would not do it that way.
I would not.
I would never use a loft.
I just would have done more in the sketch.
Yeah, you could have done the hole and the base in the same thing.
And I also would have done the rounded corners.
But that's the beauty of it. Like everyone does it
Slightly
differently.
different methods. We should fight about.
Let's loft that angled edge.
Oh God, no.
It's just 2 points and then 2 points. Oh, it's a line.
You do things differently than me. I would never do it like that.
You know, innovation that excites. So let any of us know if you need any help. Look at him. You should be teaching class.
I have experience in that stuff, so
How did you make that?
but it was very cool.
Oh.
How'd you
That's
feel
smart.
about your teaching activity?
Did you do 2 sketches and then a loft?
Yeah, so like it was like this and then at varying heights. None of these are like same height as them are, but like this one's taller than this one.
If you ever feel like we're going too slow, or you kind of want to do something else, you're more than happy to like look up your own practice parts and just kind of work like a workshop. And if any of us are available, we're more than happy to help you. Because like this was probably one of the easiest practice parts I could find. Like I found a whole archive of them, and I wanted to throw an easy one on there. But like if you want to do something more complicated, kind of push yourself. I mean, we have so many of us here, and we'd be more than happy to kind of help you one-on-one. If that was the case. I can quickly throw a second one up here.
Is there a more efficient way of doing this besides just constraints?
That's how I would do it. Another way you could do it is,
We don't have to make it at the end, it should be the speaker.
That's good. This is great.
I'm not used to explaining stuff like this dumbed down. I'm used to teaching to people who have like 1 or 2 years of CAD experience. I just kind of jump straight into it.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of did the same thing last year. So.
Yeah. Just not used to this like dumbed down.
Right, it's like, all right, now make 17 of these and build a fucking robot. Do it.
But there's so many like cool one of these online. Like this is some
You can
archive
tell.
on GrabCAD.
You can tell I was fucking sitting in that chair.
Oh my god.
Jeez, look at my feet. Look at my shoes. Oh, why are they so caked?
Paul, is this the last thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. If you want to show the survey, just the people who came in afterwards, I want to give you So if you guys haven't filled out the survey yet, please do. It's a sheet of correct of it, sentence, and make sure that our president really well.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
I wish I could get access to my old high school. Actually, let me see if I can. Hopefully they didn't boot me off of it, but back when I was on first, I should have all my old files on here.
You only had stuff since high school.
Yeah, like I said, I did first for 4 years, so I should have all my shit on there. Who cares? Sign in. Don't save. Don't save. Don't save. Let's see if I can find an email.
Every time you rock back, you die.
Oh, mine wasn't even watching.
My dorm here, the cushions, like, detached from the frame. So, like, you would sit on it and, like,
Yes. I got it. I'll leave it up there.
You don't even have like lean forward like that. If you lean forward like that, I think it's the ones that like walk back.
You're a child. No way.
Literally, like when I sit in the chair, I like.
Oh,
I sit like on my constantly. This is like my third position. Did you find it?
My subscription expired because I'm not a student there anymore. But like, damn. So I don't have like an old. I used to have the whole robot CAD in here, but I got kicked out because I don't think I got it anymore.
Renew your subscription.
No, it's, yeah, I pay a couple grand.
We're gonna pretend like it was.
I
like,
did my final for. Oh, actually, hold on. Let's see if I can find it.
what are you looking for?
My old stuff that I did in high school.
See you next week. Yeah.
Patrick. Gotcha.
Thank you for the.
Yes, of course. Dude.
Hey guys.
Dude.
I'm going.
Yeah, look, I even got to the point when my professor was teaching us how to use the machining tab in Fusion. So like we had a CNC at our shop, and I think it's not recording. Dude, that's not recording.